Hey everybody, welcome back to another fantastic episode of Ready to Die Fighting. I'm Chris, and today I want to talk about ham radios. Specifically, I want to talk about why it is so important for you to get your ham radio license right now, today. Start working on that, and test out your ham radio. Make sure you can use it. Make sure you can talk to people and do what you need to do with it. It's something I talk about all the time, testing out your gear, practicing, training. If you can't do it now, you're not going to be able to do it under duress. And I think it's just entirely too common for people to buy up a bunch of stuff that they think they're going to need in an emergency, throw it in a bag or a box or whatever, and leave it there and assume that they're going to be fine. And I would say with all of your stuff, you should test it out and make sure you're comfortable with it and it works the way you want to. But I would say even more so than anything else, when we're talking about communications, specifically ham radio, but probably just communications in general, you want to test this stuff out. And when it comes to ham radio, you have to have a license in order to actually use it fully. So without that license, you can't really fully test things out, and so you don't really know if it's going to work or not if you're in an emergency. So like and subscribe. Pointed to the wrong side there. Like and subscribe, and I'm going to walk through my little story of figuring out ham radios and why you need to get on it right now. All right, so if you've been in the prepper scene long enough, you've probably heard about ham radios and emergency communications, and it more than likely involved this particular radio here, the Baofeng UV5R. This is a really inexpensive, nice radio. Got it for less than 30 bucks, delivered to me in 2 or 3 days, something like that. Was not very difficult to figure out how to program, and so far I'm liking it. No complaints for what it is. However, even though it looks like a walkie-talkie, and on the surface it works much like one, it's not. It's more complex. Let's back up a little bit. What is ham radio? Just in case you're not familiar what it is and like you're brand new, ham radio is communication through radio waves. So everybody's got a cell phone, but cell phones are very dependent on the grid. If there's damage to the cell towers, if there's massive power outages, if too many people are trying to all call or text at the exact same time, which has happened in other emergency scenarios, the cell phones are too congested and they don't work properly, or they don't work at all. You can't get signal. And there's not much you can do about it. Either your cell phone works or it doesn't. Ham radio, that's not the case. It works basically the same as like an AM/FM radio. It's sending out radio waves. You don't need anything special. Anything that can receive those radio waves can listen to it. You don't need a ton of power, and kind of. It's not dependent on the grid. People, just like your average Joes, can make ham stations and can pick up and send out ham signals or these radio signals, and to be able to communicate even in a power down type of scenario, assuming they have solar panels to power their station. So that's what makes these so great. The range isn't as good as a cell phone. With your cell phone with the internet, I can talk to someone literally around the world. You actually can do that with a ham radio, not this one. You have to be much more, you got to get more expensive, more fancy equipment. You got to be much more knowledgeable than I am to be able to do that, but it can be done. However, what I actually cared about is I've got friends and family who are, I'd say at the furthest, about 30 miles away. And I wanted to be able to communicate with them in case of an emergency. Make sure that they're okay, they know that I'm okay, that we can plan and coordinate and hook up at some point, or whatever the case may be. If nothing else, just, are you okay? Are you alive? I wanted to be able to do that. Peace of mind. With something like this, you can do that if they're close enough to you. But here's the thing. It takes a little bit of work. It takes some trial and error. because you can't just push this button and talk and expect that it's going to work. Because like a walkie-talkie, it's just sending the information out there. And anybody else who has another one can also listen to it. But you have to be on the same frequency, right? You have to be on the same channel. And you have to know that it can go that distance. So one of the things that you use to be able to go the distance is a repeater, because you typically are not going to get enough range out of this just by itself. Now, this actually isn't even the antenna that this comes with. It comes with a much smaller antenna. I think it's like maybe that long. And with that, I wasn't getting very good range at all. With this newer add-on antenna, I was able to increase my range by about 10 miles, which was nice. Maybe even 15. It might be about around 15 miles with it, which is definitely nice, but not good enough to get to my friend 30 miles away. So then I upgraded and got this type of antenna. And with that, I can get much further, much stronger signal. However, what I discovered, I was over at my friend's house in Ann Arbor, about 30 miles away, and I tried to talk to some people in Dearborn. And, Dearborn is about 30 miles away from Ann Arbor. And I was showing them, like, this is how this works, and I can talk to people. You know, you guys can, because Dearborn's close to me, like, you guys can be able to talk to me if there's an emergency. And I turned it on, hooked it up and everything, and we were listening, and we could hear people talking in Dearborn. And it was awesome. And then I was like, well, say something back. And now you have to have a license to be able to push this button to be able to talk. If you don't have the license, second you push that button, you're breaking the law. Now, what are the consequences of that? I don't know. And during an emergency, people talk about this all the time. You know, if SHTF, you know, in case of emergency, nobody's going to care. That's true. In case of an emergency, you are allowed to push the button. If no other form of communication is available and someone's life is in danger, you are allowed to use that and push that button. But is that really the best time to figure out if this works? I don't think so. Because here's what happened when I pushed that button. These people in Dearborn, who I could hear perfectly clear, crystal clear, like they were on the phone, could not hear me. I did not have enough transmit power with this radio. So even though it was picking up the signal just fine, it was not sending the signal far enough with this little handheld unit. And that was a problem. They, in Dearborn, could hear that someone was trying to say something, and they could kind of sort of make out a little bit of it, but eventually it was just too staticky and the signal dropped altogether and they couldn't hear me at all. How useful is that? If there's an emergency and I'm asking for help, how useful is that? Not at all, in my opinion. So what good did this do me? None. Absolutely none. The only way I knew that, though, is being allowed to push this button and find out. That's the only way you can do it. Now, the other thing is, in order to get that distance, more than likely you're going to have to use a repeater. A repeater, in the simplest terms, is basically, it's almost like playing that game telephone. You want to talk to somebody over there, so you whisper into your friend's ear, and then they whisper to the next person's ear. You know, it's kind of like that. It's like the middleman. You know, you have your handheld walkie-talkie, or not walkie-talkie, ham radio, and maybe it can only go 5 to 7 miles clearly. Then the repeater will pick up that signal, and it's usually on top of a building or on top of a mountain or some high point. It's really long antenna with a ton of power. A lot of them have emergency backup power, whether it's solar or generators or whatever. And it will then broadcast that signal, your little tiny weak signal that you're sending out. It will broadcast it from this huge antenna with all this power, and now it can go the 30, 40, 50. There's an antenna supposedly downtown Detroit that can hit like 75 miles, I was told. And so now your range has increased exponentially by using this repeater. But to use the repeater, you have to be programmed to the correct frequency, and you have to have typically it's a PL tone or a CTSS tone. It's basically kind of like a secret handshake or a little password that you're sharing with that repeater, and in order to be able to use it. And then you can have your conversations and all that. But here's the thing. Again, you need to be able to push the button, because ham radio isn't all that popular or common People aren't, most people have cell phones or they use the internet. They're not playing with ham radios. It's a kind of a dying hobby, so to speak. And so you can be on the right frequency, but if no one's talking, you don't actually know if you're hitting that repeater, if people are going to be able to hear you, and if you can hear them. Now, some of the repeaters around here, like I think every hour on the hour, they tell you what time it is. Or like every so often, they'll just say, it's like some British woman, this is a repeater of, and it says like whatever its location and all that. Some of them do that. Others don't. I've just listened and it's just dead silent for maybe hours on end. So the only way you're going to know is if you push that button and give your call sign and say, can anybody hear me? Or can someone tell me how my signal's coming? Or say testing or something. And once you do that, then the repeater itself will do like a beep or something. Or you may get someone who's actually working at the station or somebody who's just sitting there listening like you are but not talking. And then they'll talk back to you. And now you know that it works, that the people there can hear you and you can hear them and vice versa. But if you don't have your license, you can't do that. You don't know what your setup needs to be able to reach the people that you want to talk to. And that's why you need to be able to do this stuff. So I recently went through and came up with a communication plan. I bought multiple antennas. I've been testing this radio out in various places at various times on different repeaters. I now have a very good idea of what works and what doesn't and where I need to be and how far I can talk to the people who matter most to me. And that is such a peace of mind. But it was also really, it was kind of intimidating, a little overwhelming to get started. And so I'm going to make a series of videos. This is the first, I guess, and kind of walk through the steps of what I did to get to that point. Because none of it was really hard. It was just, you kind of had to do it and just take the steps. And it's one of those cases where sometimes it just feels like you just got to be brave and put your foot out there and take that first step. And once I took the first step, everything else became easier. Because then it was like, oh, that's all. Okay, now I can do the next thing. And then you started to see where the problems were. And then I could go online and ask questions or watch some YouTube videos or whatever. And step by step by step by step, it became less intimidating, started to make more sense. And now I feel good about it. And I feel confident that I can talk to my loved ones in the case of an emergency or grid down situation. And then the last step is to talk to your people, whoever it is you're going to be talking to, and get them on board. Teach them how to use the radio. Even if they don't get the license, whatever, they got to know how to use the thing. So that's where I'm at. And so I'm sharing this information with you guys. I want to encourage you all, please, 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 if you have a ham radio and it's been in your backpack or whatever, and you don't have a license and you think you'll figure it out afterwards, you're not going to figure it out afterwards. You're not. Sorry. I mean, why take that chance? Figure it out now. I'm going to help you. This is the first of a few videos where I'm going to break it down and step by step tell you what I did to make it work. And if I can do it, you can too. Probably. I mean, I am really smart. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.